You stole my diamond earrings, didn't you? I leave my seat for 1 minute and suddenly they're gone.
I helped an elderly passenger with her luggage. I never touched your jewelry case.
Don't insult me with that story. You walked past my seat, and now my earrings are missing.
If you think I took them, let the crew search me and settle this the right way.
I don't need permission. Search his pockets before he hides them somewhere else.
Go ahead and search me right now. I know there's nothing in my pockets.
The flight attendant reached into Elias's jacket and pulled out a pair of diamond earrings. The first-class cabin fell silent as passengers lifted their phones to record. Vivian smiled like she had already won. She had no idea she had just framed the one man who owned the airline. Before continuing, comment where in the world you are watching from and make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you can't miss. The first-class cabin hummed with the quiet luxury of leather seats and polished metal. Elias Monroe moved down the narrow aisle with measured steps, his worn leather briefcase in one hand. He had chosen seat 2A deliberately, close to the front, away from attention. Flying anonymously on his own airline had become routine. Behind him, Vivian Ashcroft adjusted her silk scarf and checked her reflection in her phone screen. Her jewelry case sat open on the seat beside her, diamonds catching the cabin lights like tiny stars. She watched Elias's broad shoulders as he walked away from her row. The older passenger in 3C struggled with an overhead bag. Elias paused without thinking, reaching up to help guide the heavy case into place. "Thank you, young man," the elderly traveler said softly. Elias nodded and continued toward his seat. The simple act of helping took maybe 30 seconds, nothing more. "Stop right there!" Vivian's voice cut through the cabin like breaking glass. Every head turned. Elias stopped mid-step, his hand resting on the back of seat 1B. He turned halfway back, his gray eyes calm but focused. "Excuse me?" "You heard me." Vivian stood now, pointing one manicured finger directly at his chest. "You took them. I saw you brush past my seat. My diamond earrings are gone." The cabin fell silent except for the low hum of air conditioning. Passengers leaned forward in their seats. Phones appeared, ready to record. Elias turned fully around, his voice steady. "Ma'am, I'd like you to explain exactly what happened." Vivian's eyes blazed with righteous fury. "What happened? What happened is you walked by my open jewelry case and helped yourself to my earrings, 5-carat diamonds, worth more than most people make in a year." She stepped into the aisle, her designer heels clicking against the floor. "I left them right there in the case when I went to the bathroom. When I came back, you were walking away from my row. Now, they're gone." "I helped an elderly passenger with luggage," Elias said calmly. "That's all." "Don't lie to me." Vivian's voice rose to a near shriek. "You people always have an excuse, don't you? Always some sob story about helping someone." The words hung in the air like poison. Several passengers gasped. Natalie Brooks appeared from the galley, her face professional but tense. "Ma'am, please lower your voice. If there's been a theft, we can handle this quietly." "Quietly?" Vivian whirled on her. "So this man can get away with stealing from me? I don't think so. I want him searched, right now, before this plane moves an inch." She turned back to Elias, her smile cold and predatory. "You thought you could just walk away, didn't you? Steal from me and disappear into coach where you belong?" Elias stood motionless, his hands at his sides. "I didn't take anything from you." "Of course you didn't." Vivian's voice dripped with sarcasm. "Men like you never do anything wrong, do you? It's always a mistake, always a misunderstanding. Never your fault that you can't afford to fly first class, honestly." More phones appeared. The recording lights blinked red. Natalie stepped forward again. "Ma'am, if you could just—" "No." Vivian cut her off with a sharp gesture. "I want security. I want this man searched. I want him arrested before he can hide my property or pass it to an accomplice." She looked around the cabin, making eye contact with other passengers. You all saw him near my seat. You all saw him walking away when I discovered the theft. Are you going to let him get away with this? The elderly passenger Elias had helped looked confused and frightened. A businessman in 1D pretended to read his magazine. The woman across the aisle recorded everything with her phone. Elias remained perfectly still, his breathing controlled. He studied Vivienne's face, her posture, the way her hands trembled slightly despite her confident voice. Vivienne stepped closer, close enough that he could smell her expensive perfume. What's wrong? Nothing to say for yourself? No more lies about helping old people? The silence stretched like a wire about to snap. Elias stood in the aisle, surrounded by stares and judgment, while Vivienne smiled like she had already won. Natalie's face went pale. Her hands trembled as she looked between Vivienne and Elias. The weight of every passenger's stare pressed down on her shoulders. "Ma'am, I understand your concern," she said carefully, "but airline policy requires—" "I don't care about your policy." Vivienne's voice cracked like a whip. "I care about my stolen property. Do you know who I am? Do you know what happens to airlines that let passengers get robbed in first class?" She stepped closer to Natalie, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "My family has lawyers who specialize in destroying companies like yours. One phone call, and Crown Meridian will be drowning in lawsuits. Negligence, unsafe environment, failure to protect passengers." Natalie's breath caught. Her job flashed before her eyes. Vivienne's smile turned predatory. "Unless, of course, you do your job and search this thief right now." The businessman in 1D shifted uncomfortably. The woman with the phone kept recording. Every second of hesitation made Natalie look weaker. Elias watched the exchange with clinical interest. He noted how Vivienne's voice changed when she threatened, how her posture shifted from victim to predator, how she calculated each word for maximum damage. "It's fine," Elias said quietly. Both women turned to look at him. "I said it's fine." His voice remained calm, steady. "Search me, but I want something first." Vivienne's eyes narrowed. "You're not in a position to make demands. Just one small request." Elias looked directly at Natalie. "I want every crew member to remember exactly where they're standing right now. Every position, every movement during this search." Natalie blinked, confused. What?" "Humor me," Elias said. "Note where you are, where your colleague is." He gestured to a junior attendant who had appeared from the rear galley. "Where everyone is positioned during this search." The junior attendant, a nervous man in his 40s, fidgeted with his uniform. His name tag read Marcus. He looked terrified of the whole situation. Vivienne rolled her eyes. "Fine. Whatever games you want to play. Just get this over with." Natalie approached Elias with obvious reluctance. "Sir, I need to check your pockets." Elias removed his suit jacket slowly, holding it out to her. "Please be thorough." Marcus stepped forward to help. His hand shook as he patted down Elias's pants pockets. "Nothing." Natalie took the jacket, her movements careful and professional. She checked the exterior pockets first. Empty. Then the interior breast pocket. Her face changed. "Oh no," she whispered. Her fingers closed around something hard and cold. She pulled out a pair of diamond earrings, each stone catching the cabin lights like captured fire. The cabin exploded in gasps and whispers. "I knew it!" Vivienne shrieked triumphantly. "I knew this thief took them." Passengers pulled out phones. Camera flashes lit up the cabin. The elderly passenger looked shocked and hurt, as if Elias had betrayed him personally. "There they are!" Vivienne snatched the earrings from Natalie's hands. "My 5-carat diamonds, stolen by this criminal." She held them up like evidence in a courtroom. "Look at them, perfect condition, exactly as they were when this man walked past my seat and helped himself." Elias studied the earrings in Vivian's hands. Too clean, too perfectly placed. No lint, no wear from being carried. They sat in his pocket like they had been gently laid there moments ago. "Everyone saw him near my row," Vivian continued, her voice rising to fill every corner of the cabin. "Everyone saw him walking away. And now, here's the proof." She turned to address the entire first-class section, playing to her audience. "This is what happens when airlines let just anyone buy tickets, when they don't screen their passengers properly." Marcus backed away from Elias like he was contagious. Other passengers whispered and pointed. The woman with the phone zoomed in on Elias's face. But Elias remained perfectly still, his mind working like a computer. The earrings had been planted while he helped the elderly passenger. Someone had slipped them into his jacket pocket during those 30 seconds when his attention was focused elsewhere. The question was who? Marcus had been in the rear galley then, too far away. The businessman had stayed in his seat. The recording woman had been focused on her phone. That left very few people with access to both his coat and Vivian's jewelry case. Vivian raised her voice again, addressing Natalie directly. "I want this man removed from this plane immediately. I want him arrested. I want him humiliated in front of everyone so they can see what happens to thieves." She looked around the cabin with savage satisfaction. "And I want the captain called right now. This airline needs to answer for letting criminals fly first class with decent people." Her smile widened as she sensed victory approaching. The final blow was coming, and she wanted to savor every moment of it. The cockpit door clicked open with mechanical precision. Captain Roland Pierce stepped into the first-class cabin, his uniform crisp and authoritative. At 49, he commanded respect through decades of aviation experience. His steel-gray hair was perfectly combed. His captain's stripes gleamed under the cabin lights. "I understand we have a situation here," Pierce said, his voice carrying the calm authority of someone who had handled thousands of flights. Vivian immediately pointed a manicured finger at Elias. "Captain, thank God you're here. This man is a thief. He stole my earrings." She held up the diamonds like evidence in a murder trial. "Your crew found them in his jacket pocket." Pierce's eyes swept the cabin, taking in the scene. Passengers with phones still recording. Marcus backed against the galley door, trembling. Natalie holding herself stiffly, clearly uncomfortable. Then Pierce looked directly at Elias. The captain's entire demeanor changed. His shoulders straightened further. His expression shifted from professional attention to something approaching reverence. Pierce froze. "Sir," he said quietly, his voice filled with unmistakable respect, "I didn't know you were aboard today." The cabin fell into absolute silence. Vivian's triumphant expression wavered. "What do you mean, sir? This man is a criminal. I just proved it." Pierce ignored her completely. He stepped closer to Elias, maintaining perfect military bearing. "Mr. Monroe, I apologize. No one informed the flight crew of your presence." The name hit the cabin like a physical blow. Monroe. Passengers exchanged confused glances. The businessman in 1D pulled out his phone, frantically typing. The recording woman's eyes went wide behind her screen. Natalie felt the world tilt beneath her feet. Monroe. As in Crown Meridian Airlines. As in the man who owned the entire company she worked for. "You're," she whispered. Elias nodded once, acknowledging her recognition. "Elias Monroe, majority owner of Crown Meridian Airlines." Vivian's face went pale beneath her perfect makeup. The earrings trembled in her hands. That's impossible." "I assure you it's not," Pierce said firmly. He turned back to Elias. "Sir, what would you like me to do about this situation?" The businessman in 1D had gone completely white. He'd been watching the owner of the airline get publicly humiliated and hadn't said a word. The recording woman slowly lowered her phone, realizing she'd captured something far more complicated than a simple theft. Elias remained perfectly calm, no gloating, no triumph in his voice. He spoke with the same quiet authority he'd maintained throughout the entire ordeal. "Captain Pierce, keep this flight secure. No changes to our course or schedule." "Yes, sir." Elias looked at Natalie. "Ms. Brooks, I want you to preserve all statements made during this incident. Every word, every accusation. Document everything." Natalie nodded quickly, her mind racing to remember every detail. "Yes, Mr. Monroe. And no one touches that jewelry case again." His voice carried absolute command. "It's evidence now." Vivian tried to recover, her voice suddenly honey-sweet. "Mr. Monroe, I had no idea who you were. This is all just a terrible misunderstanding." She attempted a charming smile. "Surely we can work this out between reasonable people." But Elias saw right through her performance. Behind the practiced charm, behind the desperate sweetness, he saw something that made everything click into place. Fear. Not the fear of someone who'd made an honest mistake. Not embarrassment at misidentifying an innocent person. This was the fear of someone whose carefully planned operation had just exploded in her face. Elias studied Vivian's trembling hands, her forced smile, the way her eyes darted toward the exits. The pieces assembled themselves with crystal clarity. The timing of her accusation, the perfectly placed earrings, the demand for public humiliation, the insistence on involving the captain and creating maximum spectacle. This wasn't emotional anger over stolen jewelry. This was a calculated attack. Vivian Ashcroft had walked onto his plane with a plan. Captain Pierce maintained his position near Elias, creating a protective barrier of authority. The cabin hummed with the steady drone of engines, but tension crackled like electricity through the recycled air. "Ms. Brooks," Elias said, his voice carrying across the first-class section with quiet command, "I need you to document exactly who had access to my belongings during boarding." Natalie pulled out her service tablet, fingers moving quickly across the screen. Her professional training kicked in, despite her racing heart. "Yes, Mr. Monroe, I can provide a complete timeline. Start with who touched my jacket, who stood within arm's reach of my seat, who moved through this section while I was helping the elderly passenger." Vivian's perfectly composed mask cracked slightly. "This is ridiculous. You're turning a simple misunderstanding into some kind of investigation." Elias turned toward her with that same calm authority. His eyes held no anger, but something far more dangerous: absolute clarity. "Mrs. Ashcroft, false accusations aboard an aircraft are federal violations, especially accusations that disrupt flight operations and endanger passenger safety." The weight of those words settled over the cabin like a physical presence. Several passengers shifted uncomfortably in their seats, suddenly aware they were witnessing something much more serious than a jewelry dispute. Pierce nodded grimly. "That's correct, Mr. Monroe. Any deliberate disruption or false reporting can result in federal charges." "I'm not making false accusations." Vivian's voice rose, losing its practiced sweetness. "The earrings were found in his pocket." "By whom?" Elias asked quietly. Marcus stepped forward hesitantly, his face pale. I found them, sir. Ms. Brooks asked me to help check the coat when Mrs. Ashcroft insisted." "And where exactly were you standing when you reached into my jacket?" Marcus's eyes darted nervously. "Right there, by seat 1A. Mrs. Ashcroft was standing very close, right behind me." Natalie looked up from her tablet. "I have the boarding sequence logged. Mrs. Ashcroft boarded early, but she didn't go directly to her seat. She spent several minutes moving around the cabin." "That's perfectly normal," Vivian snapped. "I was getting settled." The businessman in seat 1D cleared his throat softly. He looked uncomfortable, glancing around the cabin before speaking. "Excuse me," he said quietly. "I don't want to cause trouble, but—" Everyone turned toward him. I heard Mrs. Ashcroft whispering something right before the earrings were found. She said something like, "Check his left pocket," to the attendant. Vivian's face went white. "That's a lie! I never said any such thing." "Sir," the businessman continued, looking directly at Elias, "she was very specific about which pocket to search." The cabin fell into stunned silence. Even the engine noise seemed muted against the weight of that revelation. Elias nodded slowly. "Ms. Brooks, add that statement to your documentation." "Already logged, Mr. Monroe." Pierce stepped closer to Elias, his voice dropping to a professional murmur. "Sir, I'll need complete access records for this investigation. Seat camera logs, crew service tablets, jet bridge security footage. After we land," Elias confirmed, "full documentation and preservation of all evidence." Vivian tried one more desperate play, her voice turning pleading. "Mr. Monroe, surely we can handle this privately. I'm sure this is all just a terrible misunderstanding between reasonable people." But Pierce caught Elias's eye with a meaningful look. He leaned in slightly, his voice barely audible. "Sir, you should know. Mrs. Ashcroft has connections to several Crown Meridian board members. Powerful connections." Elias absorbed this information without visible reaction, but something crystallized in his expression. The pieces weren't just falling into place. They were revealing a pattern much larger than a simple jewelry theft. The captain's announcement crackled through the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're beginning our descent into Dallas. Please return to your seats and prepare for landing." As passengers around the cabin settled in, Elias watched Vivian carefully. She'd pulled out her phone, fingers moving rapidly across the screen. Her body language had shifted from desperate charm to focused urgency. She was messaging someone. Her eyes darted up occasionally, checking to see if anyone was watching. But Elias saw everything, every frantic keystroke, every anxious glance toward the cabin door. Vivian Ashcroft wasn't just covering her tracks. She was calling for backup. The aircraft rolled to a stop at the private arrival gate, its engines winding down with a mechanical sigh. Through the small windows, Elias could see airport police vehicles positioned strategically around the jet bridge. No flashing lights, just quiet authority, waiting to take control. "Ladies and gentlemen," Pierce announced over the intercom, "we've arrived at Dallas. Due to an ongoing investigation, passengers will deplane in an orderly fashion under supervision. Thank you for your cooperation." The cabin emptied slowly. Passengers filed past with curious glances, some whispering among themselves about the drama they'd witnessed. The businessman from 1D nodded respectfully to Elias as he passed. The elderly passenger Elias had helped with luggage squeezed his arm gently. "Thank you again, dear," she whispered, "for everything." Soon only 5 people remained in the first-class cabin. Elias, Natalie, Pierce, Vivian, and Detective Sarah Martinez from Dallas Airport Police. Martinez was a no-nonsense woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and 20 years of experience reading people. She'd taken her position near the galley, notebook ready, watching everyone with professional detachment. "Mrs. Ashcroft," Martinez began, "we need to discuss the allegations made during this flight." Vivian had transformed again. Gone was the desperate woman sending frantic messages. In her place sat a fragile victim, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. "Detective, I'm in shock. Absolute shock. This man has turned what should have been a simple security concern into a nightmare." She gestured weakly toward Elias. "I lost valuable jewelry. All I wanted was help finding it. Instead, I've been trapped on this airplane, intimidated and threatened by someone abusing his corporate power." Her voice cracked convincingly. "I feel unsafe, genuinely unsafe. Mr. Monroe has used his ownership of this airline to turn the entire crew against me." Natalie shifted uncomfortably, but Elias remained perfectly still. His face showed no reaction to Vivian's performance. "Ma'am," Martinez said carefully, Several witnesses heard you direct the crew to search a specific pocket before any search began. Can you explain that? I never said any such thing. Vivian's eyes flashed with indignation. That businessman is clearly working with Mr. Monroe. This whole thing feels orchestrated to humiliate me. Pierce stepped forward slightly. Detective, there's something else you should know. We have security logs showing Grant Ashcroft had access to the departure lounge today, despite not being a passenger on this flight. Martinez looked up from her notes. Grant Ashcroft? My brother, Vivian said quickly. He came to see me off. That's perfectly normal. Ma'am, Natalie spoke quietly, I saw him speaking with our ground supervisor near the jet bridge, right before boarding began. The color drained from Vivian's face. Natalie was probably confused. She sees so many people every day. But Natalie shook her head firmly. I remember clearly. Your brother handed our supervisor an envelope. They talked for several minutes about boarding procedures. Elias finally spoke, his voice cutting through the cabin like a blade. Detective Martinez, my company is 3 days away from a federal contract vote worth $800 million. A public scandal involving the majority owner could easily influence that decision. He turned to look directly at Vivian. Mrs. Ashcroft, your brother Grant has been pushing for changes to Crown Meridian's board structure for months. Changes that would require removing current leadership. Vivian's tissue froze halfway to her eyes. That's business. Legitimate business concerns. Planting evidence on an aircraft to frame the company owner? Elias asked quietly. Is that legitimate business? Martinez scribbled rapidly in her notebook. Mr. Monroe, are you suggesting this was part of a larger scheme? I'm suggesting the timing is suspicious. A planted jewelry theft, filmed and documented, would create exactly the kind of public relations disaster that could force a leadership change right before a crucial vote. Pierce nodded grimly. The crew member who actually found the earrings was directed to that specific pocket. Someone knew exactly where to look. Vivian stood abruptly, her fragile victim act cracking. This is insane! You're all turning a simple misunderstanding into some elaborate conspiracy theory. Then explain how your brother gained lounge access, Martinez said calmly. He has connections, business relationships. There's nothing sinister about that. Natalie pulled out her phone hesitantly. Detective, there's something else. Social media is already picking up this story. She held up the screen, showing a video clip. The footage showed Elias being confronted in the cabin, with text overlay reading, "Airline owner caught stealing from passenger." But as they watched, details became clear that hadn't been visible during the actual confrontation. The video had been edited. Vivian's specific directions about which pocket to search were completely removed. The businessman's testimony was cut out entirely. Someone had carefully crafted the narrative to make Elias look guilty. Vivian glanced at the phone screen, and for just a moment her mask slipped completely. A small, satisfied smile crossed her lips before she caught herself and looked away. But Elias saw it. That smile told him everything he needed to know about how carefully this trap had been planned. The airport security office felt cramped, with everyone crowded inside. Martinez had commandeered the main desk, spreading out her notes while a security supervisor worked at the computer terminal. "Here we go," the supervisor said, pulling up the cabin footage on his monitor. "This is from Camera 3, overhead view of first class." The timestamp showed 2:47 p.m. On screen, passengers were settling into their seats as boarding continued. Elias sat quietly in 2A, reading something on his phone. "There," Natalie pointed at the screen. "Mrs. Ashcroft is moving toward the overhead compartments." They watched Vivian stand and walk toward the front of the cabin. She opened several overhead bins, appearing to search for space for her carry-on. But her path took her directly past Elias's coat, which hung on the back of his seat. The camera angle wasn't perfect, but her movements were clear. She paused beside his seat for several seconds, her hand near his coat pocket. "Freeze it there," Martinez ordered. The image stopped with Vivian's hand inches from Elias's coat. Her body blocked the exact view, but her position was unmistakable. "Move forward 30 seconds. Now Vivian was returning to her seat, carry-on still in hand. She hadn't actually put anything in the overhead bin. She never stored her bag, Pierce observed. The whole walk was just to get near his coat. Martinez turned to Natalie. "You were working in first class during boarding?" "Yes, ma'am. I remember Mrs. Ashcroft seemed restless. She kept moving around, checking different compartments, but she never actually put her bag away." "Did you see her near Mr. Monroe's seat specifically?" Natalie nodded firmly. "She stopped right there. I thought she was just being particular about space, but now—" She shook her head. "Now it looks completely different." The security supervisor pulled up another camera angle. This one shows the accusation itself. They watched Vivian's performance unfold again. Her dramatic gestures, her specific directions about which pocket to search, her tears when the earrings were discovered. But with the earlier footage fresh in their minds, every movement looked calculated, rehearsed. "Captain Pierce," Martinez said, "did Mr. Monroe threaten Mrs. Ashcroft at any point?" "Never," Pierce replied immediately. "I was watching closely because of the tension, but Mr. Monroe remained completely calm. He never raised his voice, never made any threatening gestures. What about when she accused him directly? He asked reasonable questions about timing, about procedure. Nothing aggressive." Pierce pulled out his own phone. "Detective, there's something else. The original accusation is already spreading online, but someone edited the video. They removed Mrs. Ashcroft's specific directions about the pocket." He showed Martinez the social media post. The clip had been professionally edited to remove Vivian's most damaging statements while keeping Elias looking suspicious. "Someone prepared this very quickly," Martinez noted. Elias spoke quietly from his corner of the room. "I want the original security footage secured immediately. Full chain of custody documentation." He looked directly at the supervisor. "This drive gets copied and secured for both Crown Meridian's board review and federal investigators. No one touches the original without proper authorization." "Yes, sir," the supervisor nodded, already reaching for evidence bags. For the first time since boarding, Vivian's confident mask began to crack. She sat rigidly in her chair, hands clenched in her lap, watching them systematically dismantle her carefully planned scheme. But then her phone buzzed quietly. She glanced at the screen, and something changed in her expression. The fear disappeared. Her shoulders straightened. A small, knowing smile crossed her lips. She looked up at Elias with renewed confidence, as if she'd just received exactly the news she'd been waiting for. Before anyone could ask about the message, heavy footsteps echoed in the hallway outside. The security office door opened, and a tall man in an expensive suit stepped inside. "Elias," the newcomer said grimly, "we need to talk." Martin Vale was 47, with silver hair and the polished appearance of a career executive. He carried himself with the authority of someone used to boardroom power, but his face showed genuine concern. "Martin!" Elias looked surprised. "What are you doing here?" "Emergency board meeting," Martin said, pulling out his own phone. "The clips went viral 20 minutes ago. Airline owner theft is trending nationally." He held up his screen, showing cascading social media posts. The edited video had been shared thousands of times, with increasingly angry comments about corporate privilege and airline safety. The board received 47 calls from major shareholders in the last hour, Martin continued. 3 news stations want interviews. The Federal Contract Committee is asking questions. Vivian's smile grew wider, though she tried to hide it behind her tissue. "Martin," Elias said calmly, "the security footage proves Mrs. Ashcroft planted those earrings. This whole thing was staged." "I believe you," Martin replied, but his voice carried doubt. "But the public doesn't. They see an airline owner caught stealing from a passenger. The optics are catastrophic." He gestured toward Martinez and her evidence. "Even if you prove your innocence, the damage is already done. The board is panicking." Pierce stepped forward. "The evidence is clear. Mrs. Ashcroft orchestrated this entire situation. Evidence doesn't matter if the company collapses before anyone sees it," Martin shot back. "Bookings are already being canceled. Our stock price dropped 12% in the last hour." Vivienne finally spoke, her voice now steady and controlled. "I'm sorry this misunderstanding has caused such trouble for your airline, Mr. Monroe." But her tone wasn't apologetic. It was victorious. Elias had won the evidence battle completely. Every piece of footage, every witness statement, every technical detail proved Vivienne had framed him. But she had won something far more valuable. She had won the story. The fluorescent lights in the airport parking garage buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows between the concrete pillars. Elias walked quickly toward the elevators, his mind racing through damage control strategies while Malcolm hurried to keep pace beside him. "The original drive needs to reach headquarters tonight," Elias said, handing Malcolm the sealed evidence case. "Board meeting is at 8 tomorrow morning. They need to see the unedited footage before they make any decisions." Malcolm nodded, gripping the case firmly. "I'll take it straight to the secure vault. No stops." "Good." Elias checked his watch. "Call me the moment you arrive." They reached the elevator bank. Malcolm pressed the call button while Elias pulled out his phone to check the latest social media damage. The edited video had been shared over 15,000 times now. The comments were getting uglier. The elevator dinged softly. "Level B2, Malcolm said, stepping inside. "I parked near the exit for a quick getaway." "Be careful," Elias warned, though he wasn't sure why. Something about the entire situation felt wrong. Too coordinated, too prepared. The elevator doors closed, and Elias turned toward the stairwell to reach his own car on level B1. He was halfway down the stairs when he heard the first shout echo through the concrete structure. Then a crash, metal hitting concrete. Elias ran. He took the stairs 3 at a time, his dress shoes slipping slightly on the painted concrete. The sounds of struggle grew louder as he reached level B2. Grunting, the dull impact of fists against flesh. He burst through the stairwell door and saw them immediately. 2 men in dark clothing had Malcolm pinned against a concrete pillar near the elevators. One held Malcolm's arms, while the other searched frantically through his scattered belongings. The evidence case lay open on the garage floor, its contents spilled across the oil-stained concrete. "Hey!" Elias shouted, running toward them. The man doing the searching grabbed the hard drive and shoved it into a canvas bag. Both attackers wore ski masks, but Elias could see enough to know they were professionals, focused, efficient. They weren't random muggers. Malcolm tried to break free, throwing his elbow back hard into his captor's ribs. The man grunted and loosened his grip just enough for Malcolm to twist around and land a solid punch to his jaw. But the second attacker was already moving. He pulled something from his jacket and swung it hard across Malcolm's temple. Malcolm dropped to his knees, blood running down the side of his face. "Malcolm!" Elias reached them just as both men sprinted toward a black sedan idling near the garage exit. He knelt beside his assistant, checking the head wound. It was bleeding heavily, but didn't look critical. "Can you hear me?" "Yeah," Malcolm said weakly, trying to sit up. "They got it. They got the drive." Elias helped him lean against the concrete pillar. "What exactly happened?" "They were waiting," Malcolm said, pressing his hand to his temple. "Soon as the elevator opened, they grabbed me. Knew exactly what they wanted." Malcolm's voice grew stronger as the shock wore off. "Elias, they didn't search through my stuff randomly. They went straight for the evidence case. Ignored my wallet, my phone, everything else. They knew which case to take. Exactly. Malcolm winced as he touched the cut on his head. This wasn't a mugging. Someone told them exactly what to look for. Elias pulled out his phone and called 911 first, then airport security. While he waited for emergency services, he helped Malcolm gather his scattered belongings. That's when Elias's phone buzzed with a text message. Unknown number. Resign before the board vote tomorrow, or the scandal gets much worse. Your assistant was lucky tonight. Next time, he might not be. The message was signed with a single initial, G. Grant. Elias stared at the screen, his jaw tightening. He didn't respond to the threat. Instead, he screenshot the message and forwarded it to Detective Martinez. Then he looked up at the garage's security cameras mounted on the concrete pillars. They were positioned to cover the elevator area where the attack happened. Malcolm, did you get a good look at either of them? Ski masks, Malcolm replied, still holding pressure on his head wound. But I saw something else. One guy had an airport contractor badge clipped to his jacket. Blue and white card, official looking. Elias studied the camera positions more carefully. The nearest one had a clear angle on the entire assault. These men might have hidden their faces, but they couldn't hide their movements, their coordination, or that contractor badge. Emergency sirens echoed through the garage as paramedics and airport police arrived. Elias stayed close to Malcolm while the EMTs examined his injuries. Just a concussion, the lead paramedic announced. Needs stitches, but he'll be fine. As they loaded Malcolm onto a stretcher, Elias leaned close to his assistant's ear. This mistake will cost them everything, he said quietly. I promise you that. The Crown Meridian operations room felt different after midnight. Emergency lighting cast long shadows across the walls, lined with flight monitors and communication equipment. The hum of servers filled the silence as Elias, Natalie, and Captain Pierce gathered around a conference table covered with backup files and printed records. The attack confirms we're on the right track, Elias said, spreading out documents Malcolm had copied before the assault. They wouldn't have risked violence unless we found something dangerous. Pierce poured coffee from a thermos he'd brought from the pilot's lounge. What exactly did Malcolm recover before they took the hard drive? Flight manifests, security logs, and personnel records, Natalie replied, organizing papers into neat stacks, plus backup footage from 3 different camera angles. Elias pulled up the contractor database on his laptop. Malcolm saw one attacker wearing an airport badge. Blue and white card means authorized maintenance access. He scrolled through recent badge registrations until he found it. Here, badge number AC7749, issued to Grant Ashcroft 3 days ago under Meridian Service Solutions. Never heard of that company, Pierce said, leaning over Elias's shoulder. Elias clicked deeper into the records. Because it was created last week, filed as a temporary aviation consulting firm. His jaw tightened as more details appeared on screen. Registered business address matches the Ashcroft Investment Group headquarters. So Grant got himself contractor access using a shell company, Natalie said. That explains how his men knew exactly where to find Malcolm. Pierce studied the badge photo. This level of coordination takes weeks to plan. The frame job, the fake company, the airport access. They've been preparing this for a long time. Elias pulled up another file. Security footage from the service tunnels shows badge AC7749 was used 4 times in the past week, always during off hours when fewer people would notice. Scouting, Pierce said grimly. Learning our procedures, mapping escape routes. Natalie had been quietly reviewing the evidence photos from Elias's jacket pocket. She suddenly looked up, her face pale. I need to show you both something. She spread out high-resolution pictures of Vivian's earrings across the table. The diamonds caught the overhead light with brilliant flashes. These are beautiful, Pierce said. Must be worth a fortune. That's the problem, Natalie replied, pulling up insurance documents on her tablet. I called a jewelry expert I know after Malcolm got attacked. asked her to look at these photos. She turned the tablet so both men could see the detailed analysis. The diamonds in these earrings are fake. High-quality cubic zirconia, but fake. Elias stared at the screen. "You're certain?" "My friend runs an insurance appraisal company," Natalie explained. "She can spot synthetic stones from photos alone. The light refraction is wrong. The clarity patterns don't match natural diamonds." Pierce leaned back in his chair. "So Vivian planted fake earrings in your pocket. It gets worse," Natalie continued, scrolling through more documents. "I accessed Vivian's home insurance records through our passenger verification system. Her earrings are insured for $12 million. The number hung in the air like a physical weight. She filed a theft claim yesterday morning," Natalie added quietly, "hours before boarding our flight." Elias felt the pieces clicking together with horrible clarity. The real earrings were never on that plane. She removed them from her home safe days ago, Natalie confirmed. "Probably sold them or hid them somewhere safe. Then she planted the fakes in your pocket and filed the insurance claim." Pierce whistled low. 12 million reasons to frame you. 3 goals with 1 plan," Elias said, his voice tight with controlled anger. "Frame me for theft, collect massive insurance money, and create a scandal big enough to damage Crown Meridian's reputation before a hostile takeover." Natalie pulled up another file. "There's more. I found unauthorized access approvals in our passenger screening system. Someone inside the airline gave Vivian detailed information about your travel schedule." The name on the approval forms made Elias's blood run cold. Martin Vale. "Vale approved special security exemptions for Vivian's carry-on items," Natalie explained, "bypassed normal jewelry screening procedures that would have detected the fake stones." Pierce shook his head in disgust. "Your own executive helped set you up." "Martin's been feeding them information for weeks," Elias realized. "Flight schedules, security procedures, passenger manifests, everything they needed to make this work perfectly." The evidence formed a complete picture now. Vivian's performance in first class wasn't desperate improvisation. It was theater, carefully planned and expertly executed with inside help. "How many more people are involved?" Pierce asked. Elias studied the documentation spread across the table. Corporate records, insurance files, security logs, and personnel reports painted a web of conspiracy that reached deep into Crown Meridian's leadership structure. "We're going to find out," he said quietly. "But nobody speaks about this publicly until we can trap the entire network." Natalie nodded. "If they know we've discovered the insurance fraud, they might destroy more evidence." "Or hurt more people," Pierce added grimly. Elias gathered the most critical documents into a secure folder. "We stay quiet and let them think their plan is working. Meanwhile, we build an airtight case that destroys all of them at once." The airport cargo entrance buzzed with quiet activity, even at 9 p.m. Freight trucks rumbled past security checkpoints while cargo handlers moved pallets under harsh floodlights. Elias parked his rental car behind a maintenance shed, watching service vehicles through binoculars. "There," Natalie whispered, pointing across the tarmac. "White van with the contractor plates." Elias adjusted the focus. The van sat near loading dock 7, engine running. 2 men in orange safety vests stood beside it, checking their phones repeatedly. "Same badges from the security footage," he confirmed. "They're waiting for something." Natalie had her tablet ready, recording everything. "License plate, Delta 749 Romeo. Both men wearing Meridian Service Solutions vests." The van's passenger door opened. A third man climbed out carrying a black case the size of a briefcase. Even from 50 yards away, Elias recognized the shape. "That's our missing hard drive," he said grimly. The men moved with nervous energy, constantly scanning the area. Their body language screamed guilt. They weren't casual workers finishing a late shift. They were criminals completing a job. "They're about to leave," Natalie observed as the men climbed back into the van. Elias started his engine. "We follow at a distance. Record everything, but stay quiet unless there's immediate danger." The van pulled away from the loading dock, heading toward the restricted service roads that connected cargo areas to the main terminal. Elias waited 30 seconds before following, keeping his headlights dim. Airport service roads created a maze of narrow lanes between hangars, maintenance shops, and fuel storage areas. Most routes were restricted to authorized vehicles, monitored by security cameras, and designed to keep heavy equipment away from passenger zones. The van turned left toward Hangar Complex C. Elias maintained a careful distance, using his knowledge of airport layouts to predict their path. He'd spent years flying in and out of major airports, studying their operational areas during security investigations. "They're speeding up," Natalie said, watching the van's taillights grow brighter. Suddenly, the van's brake lights flashed. It swerved hard right, tires squealing against asphalt. "They spotted us," Elias said, pressing the accelerator. The chase erupted with violent intensity. The van raced down Service Road Delta, weaving between parked fuel trucks and maintenance equipment. Elias followed with controlled precision, keeping his car steady while the van's driver made increasingly desperate moves. "Badge number AC7749 visible on the rear window," Natalie reported, her voice calm despite gripping the door handle. "Recording everything." The van tried to lose them by turning sharply into Maintenance Lane 6, a narrow passage between two aircraft hangars. Elias anticipated the move, cutting through a parallel lane to intercept them at the next junction. "They're panicking," he observed, as the van nearly clipped a parked generator. "Driving like amateurs." The van's passenger window rolled down. A man leaned out, shouting something Elias couldn't hear over engine noise. But his gestures were clear enough, threatening, aggressive. "Stay down," Elias warned, as the van suddenly braked and reversed hard. The impact threw both vehicles sideways. Metal scraped against metal as the van's rear bumper caught Elias's front quarter panel. But instead of stopping the pursuit, the collision only made Elias more determined. He spun the wheel left, using the van's momentum against itself. Years of tactical driving training kicked in as he forced the larger vehicle toward a restricted gate marked with federal warning signs. "They're heading for Gate 7, Natalie called out, still recording. "That leads directly past the main security tower." The van's driver realized his mistake too late. Gate 7 was equipped with multiple cameras, federal monitoring equipment, and automatic license plate readers. Racing through it would create permanent evidence of their criminal activity. But the men had no choice now. Elias had boxed them in perfectly, using his knowledge of airport security zones to force them into the most monitored area possible. The van smashed through Gate 7's barrier arm with a thunderous crack. Alarms immediately began wailing as federal sensors detected the unauthorized breach. Emergency lights bathed the entire area in rotating red glare. "Got them?" Elias said grimly, watching the van struggle to maintain control after the gate impact. But the celebration was premature. A second vehicle waited beyond the restricted zone, a black sedan with tinted windows and no visible plates. Grant Ashcroft stepped out of the sedan's driver's seat, his face twisted with rage even at this distance. He shouted orders at the van's occupants as they transferred the black case between vehicles. "Recording Grant directly," Natalie said. "Clear facial identification." The van crashed into a concrete barrier, steam rising from its damaged radiator. The three men abandoned it, running toward Grant's sedan with the stolen hard drive. Elias reached the wreckage first, but Grant was already speeding away with his men and the evidence. All that remained was the van's broken case, its contents scattered across the asphalt. The Crown Meridian headquarters stood like a glass tower against the midnight sky, its windows glowing with the harsh light of crisis management. Elias pushed through the executive entrance, his clothes still dusty from the chase, carrying a manila folder containing what little evidence they'd recovered from the van wreckage. The boardroom buzzed with nervous energy. 8 directors sat around the polished mahogany table, their faces pale under fluorescent lighting. Martin Vale stood at the head of the room, his expensive suit crisp despite the late hour, gesturing toward multiple screens showing news coverage. "This is a disaster," Vale declared as Elias entered. "The scandal has gone viral. Passenger confidence is collapsing." Director Patricia Webb looked up from her tablet, her expression grim. "Booking cancellations are already hitting our system. Corporate accounts are demanding explanations." "Where's the evidence you promised?" demanded Director James Crawford, his voice sharp with accusation. "You said you'd prove this was a setup." Elias set the folder on the table. "We recovered partial documentation from the service road chase. Vehicle registrations, timestamps, and Grant Ashcroft's direct involvement in evidence theft." Martin Vale scoffed. "Partial documentation? That's not proof of anything. It looks like desperate scrambling from a man who knows he's finished." The federal aviation official is reviewing. "The federal aviation official is concerned about our contract compliance," Vale interrupted, his voice rising with manufactured authority. "Your presence here threatens everything we've built. The government won't work with an airline whose owner is embroiled in public scandal." Director Susan Martinez shifted uncomfortably. "Martin has a point, Elias. The optics are terrible. Maybe you should consider stepping back until this resolves." "Stepping back means letting criminals destroy this company," Elias replied evenly. "We have evidence of coordinated fraud, evidence tampering, and assault." Vale moved to the wall screen, clicking to a news channel. "Let's see what evidence really matters." Vivian Ashcroft appeared on screen, sitting in an elegant television studio. Her eyes glistened with carefully applied tears, her designer dress chosen for maximum victim appeal. The interviewer leaned forward with practiced sympathy. "Ms. Ashcroft, can you describe what happened during your encounter with Mr. Monroe?" Vivian's voice trembled perfectly. "He seemed so angry when security found my missing jewelry in his possession. I just wanted my grandmother's earrings back, but he became aggressive, intimidating, like he was furious about being caught." "You felt threatened by him personally?" "Absolutely. The way he looked at me when the evidence was discovered." Vivian shuddered delicately. "I've never experienced anything so frightening from someone in a position of power." The interviewer's expression hardened. "What would you like to see happen?" "I want justice. Not just for me, but for every passenger who might face this kind of treatment. No one should feel unsafe because they reported a crime." Vale clicked off the screen with satisfaction. 30 million viewers. She's positioned herself as the victim of corporate intimidation. Your reputation is finished. Director Webb nodded reluctantly. "The narrative is set, Elias. We can't fight this kind of public relations damage." Elias's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Still looking for your missing files? Stop now. The real footage will never be found. G.A." He showed the message to Natalie, who stood quietly near the door. Her face tightened with recognition. "Grant Ashcroft is threatening you directly," she observed. "That's evidence of ongoing criminal activity." Martin Vale laughed harshly. "That's the word of a disgraced flight attendant who waited too long to defend her own company. Why should anyone believe her testimony now?" Natalie flinched as if she'd been slapped. The accusation hit her deepest shame. During the first-class cabin incident, she'd hesitated. She'd tried to keep peace instead of defending the truth. Her professional training had failed when it mattered most. "I should have spoken up immediately," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I let fear control my actions." Elias turned toward her, his expression serious but not unkind. "Guilt is useless unless it becomes courage. The question isn't what you did wrong yesterday. It's what you'll do right tomorrow." His phone rang. The hospital. "Mr. Monroe? Your assistant is awake. He's asking for you specifically." Says it's urgent. 20 minutes later, Elias and Natalie stood beside Malcolm's hospital bed. His left arm was in a cast, his face bruised but alert. The attack had been brutal, but his mind was clear. "They thought I was unconscious longer than I was," Malcolm said quietly. "I heard them talking while they searched my briefcase." "What did they say?" "One of them mentioned a private hangar, said the final file would be prepared there for transport. Something about making sure no trace of the original footage survived." Malcolm's eyes focused with intensity. "They specifically said Hangar 12. Someone called it the perfect place, because airport security never checks private corporate storage." Elias felt something click into place. Hangar 12 was leased by Ashcroft Industries for equipment storage, a place where evidence could be destroyed without witnesses. "They're planning to eliminate the real security footage completely," Elias realized. "Make their fabricated version the only remaining evidence." Natalie looked between them. "So, what do we do?" Elias was quiet for a long moment, his investigator's mind working through possibilities. The board was panicking. Public opinion had turned against him. His enemies controlled the narrative and were systematically destroying evidence. But they'd made one crucial mistake. They assumed he would keep fighting the same way. They expected him to rage publicly, demand immediate vindication, and exhaust himself against their prepared defenses. Instead, he would let them believe they had won. He would step back, appear defeated, and give them the confidence to make final moves that would expose everything. "We're going to disappear," he said finally. "Let Martin and the board think I'm finished. Let Vivian enjoy her victory. While they celebrate, we build the real counterattack." The hospital room was quiet, except for the steady beep of monitoring equipment. Malcolm shifted carefully in his bed, his bruised face serious in the dim light filtering through the blinds. "There's something else," Malcolm said, his voice low and urgent. "Right before they knocked me unconscious, one of them got a phone call. I heard him repeat back what someone told him." Elias leaned closer. "What exactly did you hear?" "Hangar 12 before sunrise. That's what he said twice, like he was confirming instructions. Then he said something about final cleanup and making sure nothing traceable remained." Malcolm's eyes met Elias's with intensity. "They're planning to finish this tonight. Whatever evidence they still need to destroy, it's happening at that hangar before dawn." Elias checked his watch. Just past midnight. They had maybe 5 hours before sunrise. "Get some rest," Elias told his assistant. "This ends tonight." Malcolm grabbed his arm as he turned to leave. "Be careful. These people already tried to kill me. They won't hesitate to go further." 30 minutes later, Elias sat in Crown Meridian's Emergency Operations Center with Natalie, Captain Pierce, and 2 trusted security investigators he'd called in from other company divisions. The conference table was covered with documents, tablets, and printed evidence. "We need to assume the stolen security drive is gone forever," Elias said. "But aircraft systems capture more data than most people realize. Let's find what Vivian didn't think to steal." Pierce pulled up maintenance logs on his tablet. "Every galley service gets documented. Equipment checks, supply counts, crew rotations. If someone planted evidence during the flight, there should be timing discrepancies." Natalie opened her crew tablet, scrolling through service notes. "I recorded every passenger interaction during first-class service. Look at this entry for seat 2A. She pointed to a time-stamped note. "I logged Vivian as agitated about missing jewelry 43 minutes before she accused you, but she claimed the theft happened during meal service." "She reported the crime before it supposedly occurred," Pierce observed. "That's premeditation." Security investigator Davis spread out printed photos across the table. "The galley's stainless steel surfaces act like mirrors. Aircraft maintenance photographs captured reflections we can enhance. This image shows the crew area during the exact time frame of the alleged theft." He pointed to an enhanced reflection in a polished cabinet door. 2 people in the galley. One is clearly crew uniform. The other is wearing passenger clothing, but they're handling something small and metallic. Elias studied the reflection carefully. Can you identify the passenger? Not definitively from the reflection alone, but we cross-referenced this with JetBridge access records. Only 3 first-class passengers left their seats during that service period. Vivian Ashcroft was one of them. Investigator Martinez pulled up another file. Insurance records show something interesting. Vivian filed a jewelry theft claim with her insurance company 6 hours after landing, but she didn't report the theft to airport police until the next day. She was already planning to collect insurance money before she made the official accusation, Natalie realized. This was never about recovering stolen property. Pierce was reviewing federal aviation databases. Service road violations during aircraft approach. Someone accessed restricted areas without proper clearance during your flight's arrival window. That's a serious security breach that triggers automatic investigation. Elias felt pieces clicking together. They needed physical access to the aircraft before passengers deplaned. Someone got onto the service roads illegally to coordinate the evidence planting. I'm contacting federal aviation officials, Pierce decided, reaching for his secure phone. These service road violations, evidence tampering, and insurance fraud constitute federal crimes. This goes beyond airline company policy. Natalie was preparing handwritten notes. I'm documenting everything I witnessed, including my own failure to act immediately. A sworn statement that details the exact sequence of events and my observations of Vivian's behavior. Davis looked up from his tablet. There's more. Crown Meridian's board meeting records show Martin Vale has been pushing for emergency votes about your leadership for weeks, always scheduling them during times when supportive board members couldn't attend. Corporate sabotage, Martinez added. He's been systematically weakening your position from inside the company. Elias stood and walked to the wall of windows overlooking the airport. Runway lights stretched into darkness, aircraft moving like distant stars. His airline, his responsibility, his fight. They expect me to keep defending myself publicly, he said quietly. Keep arguing my innocence while they control the narrative and destroy evidence. He turned back to the group. Instead, we're going to give them exactly what they think they want. We're going to let them believe they've won. Pierce looked confused. What do you mean? I'm calling an emergency board meeting. Tonight, but not in the boardroom where Martin expects. In Crown Meridian's private hangar, where we can control access and recording. Elias pulled out his phone and began typing a message to Martin Vale. I know when I'm beaten. If the board wants my resignation, I'll provide it. But I want to address everyone in person first. Private hangar meeting at 4 a.m. Bring whoever needs to witness this transfer of power. He hit send and looked at his team. Vivian and Martin won't be able to resist attending my surrender in person. They'll want to watch me admit defeat. And when they show up, Natalie asked, they'll discover that aircraft systems recorded everything they thought they'd hidden. The Crown Meridian private hangar stretched like a cathedral in the pre-dawn darkness. Massive aircraft maintenance lights cast harsh shadows across the polished concrete floor. Board members sat in folding chairs arranged in a rough circle, their faces tight with exhaustion and worry. The hangar doors remained partially open, letting cold morning air sweep through the cavernous space. Outside, runway lights blinked in steady patterns as early flights prepared for departure. Martin Vale paced near the front of the group, checking his watch repeatedly. Where is he? If Elias called this meeting, he should have the courtesy to arrive on time. Board member Patricia Williams shifted uncomfortably in her chair. Martin, what exactly are we doing here? An emergency meeting in a maintenance hangar at 4 a.m. feels highly irregular. Irregular situations require irregular solutions, Martin replied smoothly. Crown Meridian Airlines is facing a crisis of leadership. The public humiliation, the theft accusations, the damaged reputation. Our shareholders deserve better. The sound of multiple vehicles pulling up outside echoed through the hangar. Car doors slammed shut, followed by the sharp click of expensive heels on concrete. Vivian Ashcroft entered first, wearing a perfectly tailored business suit and carrying a leather briefcase. Her expression was coldly triumphant, like a prosecutor arriving for a sentencing hearing. Grant followed close behind, flanked by two men in dark suits who moved with the calculated awareness of private security. Their eyes swept the hangar systematically, cataloging exits and positions. "Good morning, everyone," Vivian announced, her voice carrying easily through the empty space. "I hope we can resolve this unfortunate situation quickly and professionally." She gestured to an older man in an expensive overcoat. "This is my attorney, James Morrison. He's prepared to discuss settlement terms that protect Crown Meridian's reputation and compensate for the trauma I've experienced." Martin stepped forward eagerly. "Mrs. Ashcroft, thank you for coming. I know this has been difficult for you." "Difficult is putting it mildly," she replied icily. "Being accused of fraud by a man who stole my jewelry requires a very public correction." The hangar entrance opened again. Elias walked in calmly, followed by Natalie and Pierce. No dramatic entrance, no legal team, no security detail. Just three people walking across the concrete with quiet determination. Vivienne's smile sharpened. "Ah, the man of the hour arrives." Elias nodded politely to the board members, then took a position near a portable table that had been set up with projection equipment. "Thank you all for coming. I know the timing is inconvenient." Martin immediately seized control. "Elias, this company cannot survive another scandal. The board has serious concerns about your judgment and leadership capability. The theft accusations alone have damaged our stock price," board member Harrison added. "But your public behavior, the confrontations, the refusal to apologize, it's becoming a liability we can't afford." Vivian stepped closer, her voice rising. "An apology would be the absolute minimum, along with financial compensation for defamation, emotional distress, and public humiliation." Her attorney opened his briefcase and pulled out a thick document. "We've prepared a settlement agreement. Full public apology, financial compensation, and Mr. Monroe's resignation from all leadership positions." "That seems reasonable," Martin said quickly. "Elias, surely you can see that stepping down is best for everyone." The board members exchanged glances. Some nodded reluctantly. Others looked uncomfortable but said nothing. Elias remained silent, his hands clasped behind his back. He studied each face carefully, as if memorizing their expressions. "Well," Vivienne demanded, "are you going to take responsibility for your actions? Or do we need to pursue this through the courts?" Grant stepped forward, his voice aggressive. "My sister has been more than patient, but our patience isn't unlimited." The private security men shifted position slightly, a subtle display of implied threat. Elias finally spoke, his voice calm and measured. "Is everyone here who needs to be here?" Martin looked around the circle. "The core board members, yes, and the affected party. That should be sufficient for whatever statement you want to make." "Good." Elias walked to the projection equipment and powered it on. "Then let's begin with the evidence." The first image appeared on the portable screen, security footage timestamp from the aircraft cabin. "This is Vivian Ashcroft moving toward my coat during meal service," Elias said quietly. 43 minutes before she reported her jewelry stolen." Vivian's face went rigid. "That's completely taken out of context." "Let's add context, then." The next clip showed Grant talking to the ground supervisor near the service road gate. "Your brother coordinating restricted area access during aircraft arrival." Grant's jaw tightened. "That proves nothing." Elias advanced to the next slide. Enlarged images of fake contractor badges. These unauthorized access credentials were used to enter secure zones, federal aviation violations. The board members were leaning forward now, studying the evidence carefully. Here are the edited video uploads to social media. Elias showed split-screen comparisons. Original footage versus the manipulated versions posted online. Martin stepped closer, his face pale. Where did you get this material? Insurance fraud documentation. Elias displayed Vivian's claim forms. Filed 6 hours after landing, before any official theft report was made to authorities. Patricia Williams stood up abruptly. Martin, did you authorize access to editing these videos? I never authorized anything illegal, Martin stammered. Your digital signature says otherwise. Elias showed internal approval documents. Unauthorized media releases, security protocol overrides, and board meeting manipulations. Harrison turned toward Martin, his voice sharp. You've been sabotaging Elias while pretending to support him? I was protecting the company, Martin protested weakly. Vivian grabbed her attorney's arm. We're leaving. This is clearly a setup. She turned toward the hangar entrance and froze. Federal officials in dark suits stood blocking the doorway, badges visible, expressions serious and professional. Actually, Mrs. Ashcroft, the lead official said, you're going to want to stay for this conversation. The lead federal official stepped forward, his badge catching the hangar's harsh lighting. Mrs. Ashcroft, Mr. Ashcroft, we need to discuss some serious violations of federal aviation security. Grant's face went white. His eyes darted from the officials to the projection screen still displaying evidence. This is all fabricated. Elias is trying to frame us. The evidence speaks for itself, Elias said calmly, reaching for his laptop. I have the complete digital forensics file ready for— No! Grant shouted suddenly. He turned to his hired men. Stop him! Don't let him release that file! The two security contractors moved immediately. The larger man lunged toward Elias, while the second attacker charged at Pierce, who was standing near the evidence table. Pierce tried to step aside, but the attacker's shoulder caught him hard. He crashed into the portable table, sending papers and equipment flying across the concrete floor. Captain! Natalie yelled. The second attacker spotted her evidence folder and grabbed for it. Natalie held tight, but the man was stronger. He yanked the folder from her hands, documents scattering. Federal agents! The lead official shouted. Everyone stop moving! But Grant's desperation had turned the meeting into chaos. The larger attacker swung a wild punch at Elias, who sidestepped smoothly. The man's momentum carried him forward, and Elias used precise leverage to redirect him straight into a baggage cart. The metal cart rolled and crashed, but the attacker recovered fast. He charged again, this time connecting with Elias's ribs. The impact drove Elias backward against another baggage cart, the metal edge hitting his spine hard. Elias grunted from the pain but rose immediately. His movements stayed controlled, disciplined. No rage, just calculated responses. The attacker came again, throwing haymaker punches. Elias used the hangar equipment around him like chess pieces. He grabbed a loose cargo strap and whipped it across the man's face, then used a wheeled dolly to trip him. When the attacker stumbled, Elias caught his wrist and used his own momentum to slam him face first into the hangar wall. Stay down, Elias said quietly. But Grant was already charging across the hangar floor, his face twisted with panic and fury. You think you can destroy my family? You think you can ruin everything we've built? Grant threw himself at Elias with wild, desperate energy. His tackle was messy, but powerful. Both men hit the ground hard, Grant's weight driving them into the concrete. It's over, Grant, Elias said, absorbing the impact and immediately working to control Grant's thrashing limbs. It's not over. It's never over, Grant screamed, throwing wild punches. Elias caught Grant's wrist, turned his momentum against him, and rolled him into a pin position. Grant's face pressed against the cold concrete, Elias's knee against his back. Airport police, everyone freeze. Security officers rushed through the hangar entrance, weapons drawn, voices sharp with authority. The federal officials directed them toward the scene, pointing out the attackers and ensuring no one else moved. Grant struggled beneath Elias's hold, but his energy was spent. You don't understand what you've done. The money involved, the people who won't let this stand. The only thing standing is the truth, Elias replied calmly. Nearby, Natalie scrambled across the floor, gathering the scattered documents from her evidence folder. Her hands shook, but she worked methodically, making sure nothing was lost. Pierce pushed himself up from the wreckage of the table, holding his shoulder but otherwise unhurt. "Natalie, are you okay?" "I'm fine," she called back, still collecting papers. The airport police moved in with handcuffs. Grant was pulled to his feet, his expensive suit torn and dirty, his face flushed with defeat and rage. Across the hangar, Vivienne stood frozen beside her attorney, watching her entire plan collapse in real time. Her polished composure finally cracked, her mouth opening and closing without sound. Natalie stood up with the recovered folder intact. She walked directly to the lead federal official and handed it over. "Here's everything," she said firmly. "Every document, every witness statement, every piece of evidence we collected." The federal official stepped forward as Grant was cuffed, his expensive suit wrinkled and torn from the struggle. "Grant Ashcroft, you are under arrest for assault on federal property, conspiracy to commit fraud, evidence tampering, and multiple security violations." Grant's face twisted with desperate anger. "This is insane. You can't prove anything. Elias orchestrated this whole thing to destroy us." "Actually, we can prove quite a lot," the lead official replied, nodding toward his team. "Your unauthorized access to restricted airport areas alone carries serious federal charges." Martin Vale, who had been standing silently near the projection screen, suddenly stepped backward toward the hangar exit. His smooth corporate mask was cracking, sweat beading on his forehead. "Not so fast, Mr. Vale," another federal agent said, blocking his path. "We need to discuss your role in corporate sabotage and providing unauthorized facility access to non-employees." "I don't know what you're talking about," Martin stammered, but his voice shook. "I'm just a Crown Meridian executive. I was invited to this meeting." Pierce looked up from gathering scattered equipment. "You weren't invited, Martin. You followed us here using access codes you shouldn't have." Natalie pulled out her phone, showing the screen to the federal officials. "I recorded him admitting he's been feeding information to the Ashcrofts for months. Corporate espionage, board manipulation, all of it." Martin's face went pale. "That conversation was private. You can't use—" "Actually, we can," the federal official interrupted. "Especially when it involves criminal conspiracy against a federally regulated airline." Across the hangar, Vivienne finally found her voice. Her polished composure was gone, replaced by raw panic. "This is ridiculous. Grant acted alone. I had nothing to do with his violent outburst or whatever schemes he cooked up." She pointed dramatically at her brother being led away in handcuffs. "I'm the victim here. My earrings were stolen. I was publicly humiliated. Grant obviously went too far trying to defend me, but I never asked for any of this." Elias walked calmly to his laptop, which had survived the brief fight. He pulled up a new file and connected it to the projection system. "I thought you might try that defense, Vivienne." The screen filled with insurance documents, claim forms, and detailed photographs of jewelry. Elias's voice remained steady, factual. "These are insurance claims you filed 3 weeks ago for a complete set of diamond earrings, the same earrings you claimed I stole today." Vivienne's mouth opened, but no sound came out. "You reported them lost during a home burglary," Elias continued, highlighting specific sections of the paperwork. "But as you can see from the timestamps, you filed these claims before you ever boarded that flight. The earrings you planted in my pocket were cheap replicas." The federal official stepped closer to examine the documents. "So the theft accusation was completely fabricated. Completely, Elias confirmed. She needed a dramatic public incident to damage Crown Meridian's reputation and justify the hostile takeover her brother was coordinating. The insurance fraud was just extra profit on top of the main scheme. Vivienne's attorney whispered urgently in her ear, but she shoved him away. You can't prove I planted anything. Those earrings were stolen, and I don't care what paperwork you've fabricated. The security footage proves otherwise, Natalie said, stepping forward with another folder. We have complete camera coverage of your accomplice planting the replicas while Elias was helping an elderly passenger with luggage. The federal official studied the new evidence, then looked directly at Vivienne. Ma'am, you're facing serious federal charges for insurance fraud, filing false police reports, and conspiracy to damage a regulated airline. Vivienne's polished mask finally shattered completely. Her voice became shrill, desperate. This is impossible. You people don't understand who I am. My family has connections. We have lawyers. Your connections won't help with federal aviation crimes, the official replied coldly. Pierce had been quietly making phone calls during the arrests. Now he approached Elias with his phone still pressed to his ear. The emergency board meeting just concluded. Unanimous vote. You retain full controlling ownership of Crown Meridian. Elias nodded, unsurprised but relieved. Martin's termination is effective immediately, Pierce continued, along with every executive who participated in the sabotage. The board also approved your passenger dignity reform program, stronger crew protection policies, and a compensation fund for passengers who've been mistreated. Martin was being led away in handcuffs now, his corporate confidence completely gone. This isn't over, Elias. There are other people involved, bigger players than the Ashcrofts. Then they'll be investigated too, Elias replied calmly. Outside the hangar, camera crews were setting up. The same media attention Vivienne had planned to use for destroying Elias was now capturing her downfall instead. The Crown Meridian first-class cabin gleamed under morning sunlight, streaming through polished windows. Every surface had been cleaned, every detail perfected. This was the same aircraft where everything had started 24 hours ago, but the atmosphere felt completely different now. Elias Monroe walked down the jet bridge openly this time. No disguise, no attempt to blend into the background. His steps were confident, purposeful. Behind him, Natalie Brooks wore her new Director of Passenger Integrity badge with quiet pride. Her promotion had been announced company-wide that morning, along with the complete truth about yesterday's events. Captain Pierce waited at the aircraft door, his uniform crisp and his expression warm. "Welcome aboard, sir. It's good to have you flying with us again." "Thank you, Captain." Elias shook his hand firmly. "How's the crew feeling today?" "Proud," Pierce replied without hesitation. "Everyone knows what really happened now. The whole airline is talking about standing up for what's right." Natalie adjusted her new badge nervously. "The media coverage has been overwhelming. Every news station wants to interview you about corporate integrity and passenger rights." "The story tells itself," Elias said simply. "We don't need to add drama to the truth." They entered the first-class cabin together. The same seats where Vivienne had created her theatrical accusation now waited quietly for new passengers. The overhead bins where the planted earrings had been discovered were empty and clean. "Malcolm called this morning," Natalie reported as they walked toward the front of the cabin. "The doctors say he'll make a full recovery. He wants to get back to work as soon as possible." Elias nodded, relief evident in his voice. "Grant's hired men did serious damage, but Malcolm is tougher than he looks." "Speaking of Grant," Pierce said quietly, "the federal agents confirmed he's being held without bail. The assault charges alone will keep him locked up for years. And Martin Vale? Terminated, disgraced, and facing his own federal investigation," Natalie answered. "The board found evidence he'd been undermining company decisions for months. His corporate career is over." Through the large first-class windows they could see news trucks still parked at the terminal. The story had exploded overnight. Social media buzzed with support for Crown Meridian's stand against wealth-based intimidation. Passenger advocacy groups praised the airline's new dignity policies. "The irony is perfect," Pierce observed. "Vivian wanted to destroy your reputation and trigger a hostile takeover. Instead, she made Crown Meridian stronger than ever." Elias settled into seat 2A, the same row where yesterday's nightmare had begun. But today felt like redemption. Fear and manipulation only work when good people stay silent. Once the truth comes out, bullies lose their power pretty quickly. Passengers began boarding, the usual mix of business travelers, families, and individuals moving through the cabin with their carry-on bags and boarding passes. The atmosphere was relaxed, normal, peaceful. Then Elias noticed her. An older black woman in her 70s entered the first-class cabin hesitantly. She clutched her boarding pass with both hands, checking it repeatedly against the seat numbers. Her eyes darted around nervously, as if she expected someone to tell her she didn't belong there. She stopped at row 3, seat C, and checked her boarding pass again. Then she looked around the cabin, clearly uncomfortable and uncertain. Elias recognized that look immediately. The fear of not belonging. The worry that someone would challenge her right to be there. The same anxiety countless passengers had felt when faced with entitled bullies like Vivian Ashcroft. He stood up quietly and approached her with a gentle smile. "Excuse me, ma'am. Can I help you with anything?" The woman looked up, startled. "Oh, I'm sorry. I think I might be in the wrong place. This ticket says first class, but that seems like a mistake." "No mistake at all," Elias said warmly. "That seat is absolutely yours. You belong here." Her shoulders relaxed slightly, but uncertainty remained in her voice. "Are you sure? I've never flown first class before. My grandson surprised me with this ticket to visit my great-grandchildren." "Your grandson has excellent taste in airlines," Elias replied, "and your seat is perfect. Would you like help with your carry-on?" "That's very kind, but I can manage." She settled into her seat, still looking around with wonder. Everyone seemed so nice here. Natalie had watched the entire interaction from across the aisle. She approached with a warm smile and her new badge visible. "Welcome aboard, ma'am. I'm Natalie Brooks, Director of Passenger Integrity. If you need anything at all during our flight, please let me know." The woman's eyes widened at the title. Passenger Integrity? What does that mean? It means every passenger deserves respect, dignity, and excellent service, regardless of who they are or what they paid for their ticket, Natalie explained. "That's our promise to you." "How wonderful," the woman said softly. "What a beautiful way to run an airline." Elias returned to his seat, satisfied. This was exactly what he had fought for yesterday. Not just his own reputation or his company's profits, but moments like this. Passengers feeling safe, welcomed, and valued. Captain Pierce's voice came over the intercom, clear and professional. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard Crown Meridian Flight 447. This is Captain Pierce speaking, and I want to personally thank you for choosing to fly with us today." Elias looked around the first-class cabin, the same physical space where Vivian had tried to humiliate him, where fear and manipulation had briefly won, where wealth had attempted to crush dignity. Now it was restored, clean, safe, welcoming. He stood in the aisle where he had been accused, where planted evidence had been discovered, where a crowd of passengers had watched his public humiliation. But today, he stood there, respected, victorious, and fully in control of his airline. The moment was perfect. Justice had been served. If you enjoyed the story, leave a like to support my channel, and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one. On the screen, I have picked 2 special stories just for you. Have a wonderful day.